Thanks for joining us for another edition of The Small Business Show with Cheyenne Malone, exclusively on ASBN.com.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cheyenne Malone. You're watching another edition of The Small Business Show. On today's show, we're discussing how to create a business plan, a solid one at that. Joining us now is America's #1 small business expert, CEO of Quintessence Group, and best-selling author, Melinda Emerson. Welcome, Melinda.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us today. So talk to us about the timing of when to create a business plan.
I'm a big fan of planning 12 months before you're going to launch your business. So you want to be researching, talking to people, saving up your money. But most importantly, you really have to figure out who that paying customer is. A lot of times people jump out here with things they think people need. No, you want to start a business based on something somebody's willing to pay for. And you're only going to know that if you go out and talk to potential customers. If you look at who the competition is, you get really clear on what all of your costs are and how you can make a margin, a profit margin. All of that stuff is critically important when you're thinking about starting a business.
So you're talking about the who. Now, what about what needs to be in this plan?
Well, the first thing that needs to be in this plan is your why. Why are you starting this business? That's really, really important because that's where your purpose is going to come from. It's like your mission, your vision, and your values all come into that why. And so you've got to have a why are you starting this business. The second thing you've got to figure out is how you're going to pay for it. Listen, banks do not loan money to start up businesses unless you're investing in a franchise. So most times people are starting with their own resources out of their right or their left pocket. So you got to get really clear on what resources did you have that you're willing to risk in this business. The third thing you've got to figure out is how this business is going to run, and then what skills you have versus what skills you need to run this business. Because sometimes the reason why I tell people 12 months is because sometimes you might need to go work for another business like the one you want to start before you start yours so that you can get really clear. I don't want you to start a daycare because you heard those kind of businesses make a lot of money and you've never been married and you don't have any kids and you don't like kids. Like, don't do that. I want you to really understand what's involved in running a daycare. And that might mean go work part-time for one so that you can really see for yourself. Or the same thing with a food franchise. Go work for a restaurant. Don't start a restaurant because you like to eat. Figure out how to actually run a restaurant because it's very different from being a knowledge-based worker that gets paid based on what they know versus somebody who works with these two right here and makes money. So you really have to understand the difference of that. And then you've got to figure out your marketing plan. Who is that paying customer? Where does that customer hang out online? What kind of information does that customer like to consume? Do they like to watch things? Do they like to listen to things? Do they like to read things? You have to know this because you have to make sure that you put your marketing messages in the right place so that they might see them, right? So you really want to be clear about who this customer is, where they are, and then you've got to build your marketing messaging, your unique value proposition, right? How are you special? How are you different? If you cannot clearly identify your differences from your competitors, your customer will always go to a bigger, more well-known brand. So it's really, really important that you get your secret sauce out there, whatever that is, right? So you've got to really figure that out. And sometimes it doesn't have to be this big grandiose thing. Like I love the example of Zappos. Zappos sold shoes online. What was their secret sauce? It was their customer service. They treated every customer like a VIP. They would like overnight you your shoes. They would not charge you for returns. I mean, it was like amazing to do business with them until they got bought by Amazon. Anyway, but my point is that you really want to think about how will you serve this customer in a special way? How are you going to be able to make your customer experience something that people will be willing to pay a premium for because they just love working with you? That is so, so important. And then the next thing is the money, is aware the sales projection. And when I say sales projections, I mean realistic sales projections. I don't mean these pie in the sky. You're not going to make $30,000 one year and $1 million the next, right? A 20 to 25% increase is aggressive. Sometimes if you're selling something internet-based software, you can have a 100% growth year. But how are you going to keep that up, right? You got to justify all these things. So you want to develop a budget and your sales projections. Like, how much money is it going to cost you to operate this business? And what kind of sales do you have to make on an annual, quarterly, and monthly basis? And I'm big on that, because if you know how much money you got to make this month, that means you know how much money you got to make this week, which means you know how much money you got to make today. And so I don't like people focusing on, $6 million. $6 million is $83,000 a year in a bank account for 10 years, right? So let's break it down into small numbers so that it doesn't seem so big, hairy, and scary, right? But give yourself some real accountability around your sales numbers that you have to generate.
Anything, Melinda, that shouldn't be included in a business plan?
Don't include your super secret sauce, right? Don't include your actual IP, anything that you have patent pending or something like that, because you never know where a business plan can end up if you're going to, be out there presenting it to people or pitching for funding or something like that. So you definitely don't want to put your actual secret recipe. You want to say you have one, but I wouldn't put the recipe itself in your business plan.
That makes sense, because there's some sharks out there for sure.
Yeah. Yes.
Any final thoughts for us in regards to this topic, Melinda?
Well, the thing you got to understand about a business plan is that it is a living, breathing document, and it should be updated really every 3 to 6 months in the first 2 or 3 years you're in business, because really it's your hypothesis of what you think is going to happen. And once you get out here and get some customers, that gives you data, and you have to go back and adjust your plan based on the data. And you have to stay flexible, because there's so many ways to learn. You got to be doing 12 things right every day to be running your business well. And none of us does 12 things right every day, right? So you really want to think through how you can build a plan that's going to work with you.
Melinda Emerson, America's #1 small business expert, CEO of Quintessence Group, and best-selling author. Thanks so much for your time today, Melinda.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thank all of you for watching the Small Business Show exclusively right here on ASBN.com, and now streaming on Roku, Fire TV, and Apple TV.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of The Small Business Show with Cheyenne Malone, exclusively on ASBN.com.